सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Facing the grim stare of a judge in the bowels of a government office in the fly-blown dusty town of Dera Ismail Khan, the actress Musarrat Shaheen prepared for the most important performance of her life. The star of hundreds of low-budget Pashto films, among them the 1990 cult classic Hasina Atom Bum, Shaheen had devoted her later life to contesting elections against the fundamentalist politician Maulana Fazlur Rahman. Now her war against clerical hypocrisy depended on her delivery. The cleric supporters had turned to a then obscure clause in Pakistan's constitution mandating that candidates in all elections prove their credentials as pious Muslims, Sadiq, which is truthful, and Ameen, faithful. The judge demanded that she also demonstrate her knowledge of Islam. Flawlessly, Musarrat delivered the Surah Akhlas and the Dua-e-Qanut, and then offered to recite any other passages of the Quran the judge might wish to hear. Then she majestically swept out onto the streets of National Assembly Constituency 124 and resumed her in-person trolling of the good Maulana Saab. This week, former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif announced that his brother, ex-Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, the most high-profile victim of the Sadiq and Ameen requirement of Article 62 of Pakistan's constitution, will return from self-exile in London next month. The Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz Sharif party desperately needs its star politician to shore up its popularity, which has been hard hit by economic distress and soaring energy prices. By the way, petrol prices in Pakistan just went up to 324 rupees a litre, so we guess we shouldn't complain. Later this month, Sharif's bete-noir, Pakistan's Supreme Court Chief Justice Umar Atiyah Bandial, who authored the 2018 judgment that disqualified Nawaz from membership of Parliament for life, will retire from office. Nawaz and other leaders of the PMLN party hope the new Chief Justice will prove willing to reverse his order, either by amending the length of disqualification or clearing him of corruption-linked allegations. There is no way of telling, of course, how the courts and their lordships will deal with this issue, but the requirement of piety goes to the heart of Pakistan's dysfunctions. The use of Islam to legitimize the power of the military and civilian elites has wounded the country's democracy deeply, perhaps beyond healing. Even though the PMLN is eager to help Nawaz escape disqualification, it is showing no interest in addressing the deeper problem and its own complicity in creating it. Indeed, lawmakers are doubling down on brutal blasphemy laws in a bid to seize the religious high ground from increasingly powerful jihadists like the Tehreek-e-Taliban. Ever since its independence, Pakistan grappled with the role Islam ought to have in its constitution and laws. Even though the constitutions of 1956 and 1962 conceded sovereignty lay with God, not the people, the practical impact of this principle was limited. The eligibility of lawmakers rested on questions like citizenship, financial solvency, mental health, not piety. Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's 1973 constitution advanced the Islamization project, but again in ideological terms. The nuts and bolts changes to the electoral qualifications law began under the military regime of General Muhammad Zia-ul Haq. Lawyer Saad Rasool has recorded in a very thoroughgoing analysis. In 1985, he says, new clauses were inserted demanding that members of parliament be, and I quote, of good character, have knowledge of Islamic teachings, and of course meet the benchmarks of Sadiq and Amin. Zia's elections laws were part of a larger set of Islam-inspired legislation, which included the setting up of Sharia courts, the imposition of religious taxes, and even the rules of evidence. The laws, political scientist Wali Nasser has noted, gave substance to the right-wing Jamaat-e-Islami's promise, I quote, to attain a utopian Islamic state that would embody and implement the core value of Islam and thus solve socio-political problems. Basically, Zia thought he could amputate his way to a just social order. Law scholar Amber Dar has pointed out that post-Zia governments also continued these efforts. Former interim Prime Minister Ghulam Mustafa Jatoi's government enabled the payment of blood money to hush up murder cases. The governments of Benazir Bhutto and Nawaz enforced religious laws in Pakistan's northwestern tribal areas and expanded the scope of blasphemy laws. Even though another military dictator, General Pervez Musharraf, would seek to expand these legislative requirements further, the courts pushed back. The requirement of piety had little practical impact on Pakistani politics or politicians. From 2009 though, former Chief Justice Iftikhar Muhammad Chaudhry began using the disqualification clauses of Article 62 and Article 63 to remove lawmakers accused of having obtained fake degrees, concealing assets, or hiding dual nationalities. Even though his successor, Chief Justice Asif Khosa, described the terms Sadiq and Amin as, and I quote, obscure and impracticable, most of his colleagues disagreed. The 2013 general election saw returning officers run amok with the policing of candidates, especially women. Tayyaba Sohail Chima, a candidate in Lahore, was ordered to display her face to the public on the grounds that the provincial election commissioner did not believe she looked her stated age. Another candidate, Sadia Sohail, was hectored about purported conflicts between her duties as a mother, a politician. Journalists Khalid Qayyum and Rana Yasif have reported. Of course, women weren't the only victims. Karachi politician Zahid Ahmad, a leader of the far-right Sunni Tehreek, was asked by Justice Farzana Iqbal what the abbreviation of LLB stood for, how to spell graduation, and superintendent. He failed all three questions. Conversely, the journalist Ayaz Amir, who without doubt would have passed the same tests, was disqualified for his political writing, which is said to have opposed the official ideology of Pakistan, whatever that means. Faced with the disqualification of Nawaz for charges related to overseas bank accounts and properties, the government considered amending the constitution to remove the Sadiq and Amin criteria. But it was just too late. The former Prime Minister would be arrested, then allowed to leave Pakistan for treatment of medical conditions. Wisely, he never returned. The fate of Nawaz was linked to the wider ascendancy of the military, which cast itself as a morally superior alternative to corrupt politicians. Even the pretense of accepting subordination to the civilian government, the political scientist Akil Shah has noted, had disappeared by 2015. The previous year, 132 school children had been massacred by Tehreek-e-Taliban terrorists at the Army Public School in Peshawar. The military, which had been negotiating with those very terrorists, tried to cover up by arrogating to itself the right to prosecute the perpetrators in secret army courts. Imran Khan's rise as Prime Minister brought to power a politician who was said to embody the moral values the military represented. Like his predecessors though, Imran's anti-corruption credentials would eventually be called into question by the military itself because it became worried about his growing power and clout. As Nawaz prepares to return home, Pakistani democracy is degenerating into a kind of de facto military rule. The Pakistan Army's Chief General Asim Munir is engaged in the kind of polemical extravagance you normally associate with politicians. At one recent meeting with business leaders, he promised to bring in $100 billion in foreign investments. That's twice as much as the country drew in all the years from 1970 to 2022. Even if Nawaz succeeds in having himself declared both Sadiq and Amin with the help of the army, and Imran replaces him in the military doghouse, he will at best inherit a half-formed democracy. Like the incredibly courageous Musarrat, politicians like Nawaz need to summon the resolve to challenge military authority and the religious fundamentalism that sustains its power. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm National Security Editor of ThePrint. Thank you once again for watching Security Code.